this is exactly why these groups are so important to me, and it's why I try to come to every single one of them, is because, you guys are the representative voices of your colleagues, and it always makes sense to not just hear you all, but take your advice on how do I move something forward? Where do I go with it? The easiest path for me is to my boss, but then it's like a mandate and a decree, and it doesn't play out well across campus. So I much prefer to incubate thoughts with this group, get your reaction. If it rises to the level of a mandate or a, hey, go get this done, even better. But because Jay will ask me one of the first questions he'll ask me is, have you spoken to the deans? Have you spoken to the faculty? Have you spoken to the provost? There's very little that I go to him or he talks to me about that he doesn't say, make sure, Sharon before, now Rachel, or make sure that you speak to representative group of faculty. So you have my full attention in this group and in C-14 because it's a direct pathway to getting getting things done.
It's so important that faculty have a voice in the decisions that are being made, both administrative, because you all are affected by those decisions as well. So how can we put ideas, initiatives out in front of faculty? And this is one of our ways to do that.
We are obviously behind from a modern ERP perspective, right, with mainframes, but I'm not going to propose replacement of anything of that nature until the people who own those environments are here and have had a chance to settle in. So I'm mostly speaking about our CFO, right? Like
Hmm.
like we're hiring a new CFO. I can't imagine a CFO is going to come here and say, yeah, I'm happy to be here for the next decade with a mainframe, right? So he or she is going to say to me, what do we think about modernizing? And once I hear things like that, that's when we jump into action.
Yeah.
That's not that I don't, that I want to make sure that the business leaders and the academic leaders who own those lines of operations and functions are the ones that are really feeling like they have to own that transformation for their organization. I'm here to support it, make it work well, leverage my team to it, but really like the provost would have to own a decision to say, hey, let's go after a new student information system for me to
Hmm.
for me to engage.
And that would be the big one.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
that
that would certainly be the big one.
the
That's probably
financial
the
system
most
would be the
target rich.
hardest. The
Yeah.
financial system would probably be the hardest, but the student information system would give us extraordinary flexibility that right now we're a bit limited in. And it would mean changing a lot of business rules. I mean, the business process
It's
redesign in
giant
both of
and
those areas is massive,
it's a giant multi-year endeavor.
huge. Yep.
And anyway, if you go down that path, but that's probably the most obvious path. Anyway,
Yeah.
just saying. And you
But
have
both
another,
of those,
yeah,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Russ, sorry. I was just going to say both of those are on the roadmap. At some point, we have to get off the mainframe. The question is when are we getting off the mainframe?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I just want to throw that out there. At some point, we have to change and we have to accept it. Like business processes are going to have to
Yeah,
change.
those feel like pillars to me. So the couple, there's like four or five pillars out there, and two of them got addressed. The canvas was huge and amazing. And anyway, but now we got the other side, the other pillars holding up the other side of the roof.
Yep.
So anyway, we'll get there. But Cole, you have another steering committee, right? More administrative.
I
That,
have multiple
yeah, that would
ones.
be more in
It,
that group.
it's funny that you bring it up. I'm actually working on a presentation for Jay that's outlining all of the existing governance groups on campus that I have to interface with and recommending an executive level one because there does not exist a top level presidential provost group that I can go and present a body of work to say this is what we want to do over the next X years, or this is what we want to agree on. Um, we have to change our own practices internally to my org. We don't solicit projects in a systematic way either. Like we don't send out a call for projects or programs. It's really who comes to us, or if, Mario has a great idea and he knows that there's a faculty member who would be a champion, he goes directly there, or the faculty member comes directly to Mario. Um, so we don't have like an intake process where programs get vetted by anyone. Most of our projects come to us without a funding source, and we're left trying to figure out how do we make this happen. So yeah, there are a number of governance groups, but they're mostly around conversation and refinement.
Hmm.
Very few of them around prioritization and investment strategy.
Got it. That's the way I perceived it too.
Yeah,
And
we
even in
together we talk.
yeah, even in the report that came out before you got here, that bit of work, that was a lot of organizational and conversational stuff. Would you agree, Mario?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was really trying to lay out the interface, the human interface, in the conversation and the flow.
Yeah, I,
But I don't know, I don't feel like it maybe quite completely got there. So,
no, we're not there yet, right?
yeah,
And um, we have a couple problems. One, we have a communication gap with campus, and this is larger than just IT. I don't feel like there's a robust internal communications strategy to make anyone aware of changes that are of substance. Like, right, we all have these ways to send out emails or post up flyers, but nothing coordinated.
yeah,
That's one problem. The other problem is we don't really have an underlying funding model for IT um, that allows my office to say, from a common good perspective, we need to attack X, Y, or Z that may be very infrastructure related. So I have to sort of sit back and just watch the network fall apart because I don't have an annual sustainability fund. Like I think about my technology stack very much like the physical buildings on campus. There's a deferred maintenance amount that should be budgeted
sure.
for
Yep,
and managed over time. And
yep,
so we have communication challenges, we have governance challenges, and then we have funding model challenges. And you put those together, and that's why I'm so excited about us hiring CFO that will come with some fresh ideas and new approaches to think about how do we solidify the year over year investment to get us incrementally better.
yeah,
So I have like 6 groups that I meet with on a regular basis, but all of them stop at the level of this sounds great. Go forward and do something, but we don't have any money to give you. We don't have any prioritization to help you. So then I take it from all 6 of those groups and I want to raise it up to president, provost, CFO, COO, present that whole picture to them in the middle of the year and have a dialogue about what should we be prioritizing. If we only
yeah,
have $1 million of these 12 things that have flown out, which of those 12 should we prioritize this year?
makes
Which
sense.
should we leave on the parking lot for next year? And then, of course, new things will fill up in the background. So I'm not dissatisfied with the various governance groups. There just isn't a mechanism to turn them from idea generation prompt into action.
Yeah. So when I joined as co-chair and joined into this process, and actually, thank goodness Mario and others were there anyway to kind of guide us because you come into one of these committees, you really have not a lot of foundation to work from, and it takes a while just to assimilate. And how's this thing operating? What are we supposed to do? And anyway, but we do have some continuity, but it's mostly the staff members, that have been helping us um, for a long time. But we really came out of 2023. It sounds crazy to me that this was really our list because it's not that deep and not that hard. But I feel like it gave us direction and really as it launched us into where we're getting to, I feel like we're accelerating out of this is really what's happening. But one of them was, what do we want to really do with this committee? And really, that first one was uh, maybe the most important. Just what are the core principles? What are some norm setting We feel like you got the voices from the different schools. Uh, what should be common, what should not be common. I feel like those are helpful things for you, Cole. When you need the leverage of we need this thing in our portfolio and it's going to be common to everybody and it needs to be funded appropriately from wherever, however that works. I don't know how it works, but anyway, here's the group that's, you know, backing this up. And so that leads into maybe a little bit of filtering of these things are always going to be inside this school because nobody else is doing that. And they really need the expertise around it. But on the other hand, these other things, that's common to everybody and probably needs a somewhat of a stake in the ground on this is going to be our common thing. And then even some of the principles of using it or policies around it need a stake in the ground on those too. So anyway, that was kind of our realization that we can really be helpful to make that happen. So I feel like that it feels symbiotic because you're here and now we can help. The next one was a little bit of the equity of resources. And of course, that's coming out of COVID. And so everybody's hypersensitive about all that. And I didn't realize that some schools had a lot of resource in IT and other schools don't. And so that there, you really in this group, you get more sensitites to that fact. And but I feel like we have to stay at a pretty broad level and a policy level and more foundational level. But some of those conversations back then, Cole, were like, how come we can't buy a PC for our graduate student in this program? You know,
Yep,
very, very granular stuff.
yep.
Yeah. And I think we're too high of a level group to go to that level of granularity at one school on one program, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I would argue, Russ, in a situation like that, the type of resolution that we could pass for exploring a funding model to ensure that all of our graduate students have a bare minimum of X technology in their possession, I would see that to be um, something that would rise to the level of this group.
Yes.
And it would help that single instance, but it would set a baseline expectation that no, we are not going to allow our paid graduate students or our paid graduate teaching assistants to not have the tools that they need to do their jobs, period.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Like
that
that's
feels
the
like
kind of
something that can
resolution that
come
I
out
see.
as a more of a strengthened, even to the level of a resolution or something, but minimum in a report.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, Russ, is like a decision like that also ties in our classroom and learning spaces strategies because I can't make any progress on, say, not putting PCs in classrooms if I can't be guaranteed that a large percentage of our instructors walking into those rooms don't have access to their own devices to bring. So it doesn't just like limit that one thing, it holds up other parts of a digital strategy going forward. So I can't even have a conversation about classroom technology because we know that a large percentage of our instructors don't have technology.
Makes sense. Well, that's where we're going with the equity of resources. Faculty one-stop shopping, that that happened. And so that was good, very good listening. But it's like the people that were in the room and in our meetings are like, we can make that happen. Like that's not beyond us. So that did happen. I'll talk about that in a minute. Rationalization of the existing IT capabilities. I got to think you're doing that already. Like you're looking use case by use case by use case, and you're finding your way to the ones that maybe need to be replaced or changed or whatever. I don't know. I feel like it's amazing to me. UT, in some areas, we're just right on the cutting edge. It's just where we need to be. It's really amazing. And then there's these other areas that kind of lagging way behind and
And that's what
they,
everybody looks like, though.
they
That's
need champions. Yeah.
that's the good news, Russ, is that, and I keep saying this to folks on campus, is that we're in the same boat as everybody else. So it's not like we're behind holistically. You just said it, we're miles ahead in certain areas. We have catching up to do in other areas. that other campuses may be ahead, but it doesn't mean like it's not like football, right? There isn't a national ranking for this. We need to get to the place where we're providing equitable access to technology tools that reduce the friction of the people that use them. And you're right, we have varied capabilities across campus.
Yeah.
Very varied.
And then our last piece was the new CIO thing. So here you are. Feel good about that.
Feel great about that.
Yeah. And then the strategy that got released, but again, I've looked at that thing many times and I don't feel like it's necessarily what I would call a strategy. It just was kind of laying out the playing field for everybody. And I
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
think it got completely defined or solidified.
no,
So,
we're I'm in progress on an articulatable strategy, but when I came here, I didn't know that one of my primary responsibilities was going to be a lead in building a hospital and putting in an electronic records management system, a new financial system, HR system for the hospital. You know what I mean? So about every month I've been here, I've discovered that, oh, that you thought that was your job to think about, but it's really that plus this. And
yeah.
so
Well, that's
it
going to be a attention getter.
and the
Yeah.
goalposts are moving, right, as I'm working.
Yeah. And that's all tier one stuff. So, yeah, no, can't drop the ball on any of that.
Must happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay. And then the next thing that we did is we started thinking through these as a little bit more of a journey, like journey of faculty members. And this was a little bit more not thinking about it from as Mario was saying, with the learning technologies, but more thinking about it administratively or
Mhm.
resource wise. And especially where we really realize that we can make a difference is in the research and the availability of resources for research. I was pretty amazed by how much people don't know what they can use or don't use or for me, I just came out of the process of the last 2 years of there's wow, there's so much clarification to be done on what you can do in the research space and how do you get to it and how do I resource it? And I don't know. I feel like that's granular and that needs some conversation, and we probably need to carve out time for it. And but it's a little bit ad hoc as well because they get funding, and so now I got some money. Where am I going to use it? You know what? And I don't want to get granular in this meeting, but definitely depending on where you're going to store your data, how you're going to analyze things, what statistical methods you're going to use, all that. There's a wide plethora of tools. And I don't know if people really know this is the best one for this situation, or there's a lot of use case stuff that needs to be thought through. And then that even your group has resources
Oh yeah.
that can be applied to research. And then we got a ton of vendors coming at everybody, uh, with the clouds. So that feels right to me for policy and a little bit of journey mapping and use case, but that's pretty granular. But again, that's definitional work.
Yeah, it's granular, but it's broad. I mean, the faculty experience is a critical one. But I would argue that there are multiple personas that to be explored in those journey
Yes.
maps
Yep. Yep.
and
Right.
identifying which offices are the ones that support those parts of the journey.
Hmm.
Because research administration is a huge part of faculty experience when they're, going through the work
And
of
even
being,
the archiving, I mean, there's a lot of things.
oh, the
And then
libraries.
you
Yeah.
can go even more deeply into AI visibility into it, for future. So there just feels like a whole architected thing to be done there and kind of what the lifespan of all that data. And I don't know, maybe you can leverage the medical school experience a little bit on that too, because you're going to be creating and architecting something for them, and they're probably going to be ahead of everybody on a
Yeah,
lot
they
of
have a deadline, right? They have to open the
yeah,
hospital. So it's
yeah. And we have representatives on this committee from the school. And so use cases is kind of what we're talking about too. And then maybe a harmonization process. So as you're doing your master strategy, we can be harmonizing into it or vice versa. And then I felt like we needed to do more policy proposal around things in our scope.